Alright, we are live. It's a little slow. So I tell you the viewer. See if Twitch comes on here. We're on Twitch. Oh, I just want to talk about the options. I really need like way faster internet to do this. This was not very good. It looks good, but let's see what happens. Okay, we'll do that. This is right now. It's just going down big time. And what's going on? Exposures to find. Why is it so much expect first? This one looking good. Nice to have a real viewer. I don't think I'm ever going to get viewership on there. Oh, look, Twitter and Twitch shared my call. Give me the viewer here. And, you know, conversation is just about a little $1,000 account that I'm playing with options. And, you know, I don't know if that's interesting really. I mean, I think there are, you know, I would say what's more interesting is I just went to my local Applebee's and suggested that, but this isn't even a real viewer, so it's not really relevant to the roboter. And the one viewer is probably not real, so that's a bit of a problem. The internet's not really good enough to have a play on that. Yeah, I don't know. If you have one viewer, tell all your friends to join this stream and we can have a conversation about finance. I mean, the reality is, what I was thinking about earlier, is options are gambling, basically, and might be educated gambling at best. And, you know, again, with $1,000, I don't feel that bad about kind of just playing around with options. You know, it's one of those things where really any sensible option strategy would, you know, put maybe 10, 20% of your portfolio in options. 20% is a lot. I mean, one thing to do is to have 10% in options and then 90% in treasury bills. If you're like seriously trying to invest with options, because if you put all your money in options, you know, there's a, for most options, there's basically like a 50% chance that you lose most or all of your money. So definitely putting all your money in options is a recipe for disaster. But again, like any gambling move, every once in a while there's going to be people who, you know, make a lot of money in a short amount of time. But when you're up against like high trading computers and people with PhDs in mathematics and physics and, you know, all of this, you don't really stand a chance to make money over the long run. Although, I mean, you know, I don't know, my strategy is basically using fair value calculations to try to predict which way the stock is going to go. And as I said, it's $1,000 that basically I don't have any serious plans for it. I definitely could put it into savings or just regular equities, but I felt like doing options. And, you know, right now I'm up $11. You know. So $11 in a week is on 1,000 is, you know, about 1%. So it's actually really pretty good, things considered. So, you know, I don't know if that'll continue, but I just feel like I'm working too hard. When I work really hard, you know, it stresses me out, and I feel like my stress relief is doing really risky things, like, you know, proclaiming at an Applebee's that, you know, I don't know, talking about civil war and, you know, various things I disagree with, like debt and taxes and urbanization of people and environmental destruction. I would say that's a risky behavior. You know, that could backfire depending on, you know, who's listening. I mean, at the very least, you know, I got lucky that they didn't kick me out of the restaurant. they basically tolerated it. But really the message I tried to put out there was, I need a little bit of community support here of, just general community policing. I'd rather be allies. I know I was kind of making fun of the Homeland Department of the Homeland that, largely funds a lot of these, partly funds these community policing. But the reality is today at, around noon, I had somebody screaming bloody murder up and down the street. Now, I don't know if that was sort of a Masonic, symbolic gesture, or if this person was angry, but it's not good for me because, I'm already thinking about, sort of combat stuff, and, it makes me want to shout back, and, I don't know where that goes, but, it's just a matter of kind of, keeping the, yeah, that's why I had to take tonight off from DoorDash, because I just felt like that Applebee's thing was a little over the top, and, I just think there's a clear sign that I need to get some relaxation, because I definitely was up at like 7 o'clock this morning, and then pretty much going nonstop till 7 o'clock when I had dinner, and then the dinner was, pretty intense. So it's like a 12-hour day of relative intensity, and again, I don't do super well when I get that way. I feel like I start getting overconfident, and it's just a matter of kind of trying to find balance between, yes, the car is one thing to say, oh, I think you should have the right to sue for civil war, but definitely, in terms of, if we get into an economic depression with hyperinflation and, a social ecosystem that's falling apart, or, has to raise taxes indefinitely, and having prices that are out of reach for most everybody in my generation, and, student loan debt rates that are, interest rates going up through the roof on our student loans. And again, I said in the Applebee's that if we could find a diplomatic solution for these problems, that's fine. I also mentioned that, my opinion on inequity between different families of different types is that, yes, if you're stuck in an urban building, with little resources and little, it's just like any example of if you put any groups in a confined space, small confined spaces in a very large building or, type of building, you're going to have negative outcomes. And don't try to put me on, calling anybody an animal. I'm just saying inevitably we're all animals, by our nature. Obviously there's, I'm just suggesting the metaphor of, some of these urban developments that, are very small square footage and not very well kept and, not very well funded. Obviously here in Maine, we have very few of these situations. When I lived in New York, you take a trip up to the Bronx and even parts of Queens, all over the place, there would just be these huge buildings that, house thousands of people. And, it was just, the energy there was very, very negative, in my opinion. So again, the solution is to de-urbanize those people into, and again, it's not necessarily always a certain race. I would say, there are certain types of people. Like in our state, it's more like these sort of rundown houses. Like when you drive up here on Water Street up towards Bond Street that way, some of those houses are not good. Even and then down on Gay Street, there's just certain areas of problems in this city, but definitely doesn't compare to what I experienced when I lived in New York and Harlem, and as I traveled around Queens and such, and then the Bronx and even Brooklyn. So again, all I'm suggesting is that speaking about these issues, in a public restaurant is a risky behavior, but and a relatively extreme behavior. I mean, it's I didn't shout about it or make a scene about it. I kind of blended into the situation pretty well, actually, but it's still something that I don't really want to make a habit of, because I think it's just inevitable that eventually I'm asked to leave or I get kicked out. I mean, I think that's pretty much the worst. Unless somebody wanted to challenge me to, again, I don't think any of my ideas are viscerally terrible. The harsh people, the people I'm harshest on are the Southern Anglicans. If there's one group of people that would have a serious complaint, and even then, I don't really, mostly ask them to be the counter in a civil conflict so that we could have a battle to, dispute these things. So, I mean, again, you may disagree with like the policy of, trying to create a mortgage-free ownership scheme, or trying to dismantle the central bank, or trying to, kind of end the, globalist production of goods for our country, and, the environmental stuff. Or, and you may even disagree with the idea that people should be entitled to rural land as a natural right. But you may disagree, but none of those ideas are viscerally like, oh, that's a hateful idea, or that's something that I, just can't. I mean, again, when I talk about cancel culture, I'm just pointing out that historically, those type of behaviors usually end in, severe rage for the people who are doing the eavesdropping and the, the sort of, submissive, not submissive, or subversive type activities against each other. I mean, it just doesn't tend to end well. I mean, I am not really one to say that people can't do it. I just, it's definitely a subversive tactic, as far as politics go. I mean, it's not very diplomatic or civil. It's just basically, again, I'm just saying that would be one that maybe people who do that might be offended, that I kind of suggested that, inevitably they get kind of, once just the targeting back and forth can get to the point where somebody gets seriously, kind of like, labeled and targeted, and it's just a very, very subversive tactic. So, but again, other than that, trying to think of other ideas that I've had that could be hateful. Certainly haven't been many. I mean, I'm definitely a little harsh on the voting thing, I would say. That could be construed as, me saying I want a meritocratic electorate, whether that's based on income tax, whether that's based on testing, whether that's based on some ethical combination of the two. I mean, again, you can disagree with that, but I'm certainly not basing it on any incontrollable aspect of being, you know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say I have many ideas that are not popular in a majority sense, but that doesn't mean I can't have those ideas, and it doesn't mean that, the problem I face, obviously, in the Democratic Republic is, until those ideas can become popular, until you can convince a populous amount of, majority of legislators that the ideas are valid. And that's why I talk about them all the time, because we live in a damn democracy. If we lived in a, monarchy or an aristocracy, I would just try to go to the king or the nobles and, talk to them. But because we live in a democracy, you kind of have to constantly be putting these ideas out there. Otherwise, if they don't reach a majority, they go nowhere. And that's why free speech is so important for a democracy, because, inevitably you have to use your speech to, I mean, what else? I mean, I guess speech and written word, which is freedom of speech and freedom of press. And that's all you really have to influence people. Well, I mean, now you have freedom of technology, but that's actually the big question right now. It's kind of like, where does that fall in the spectrum of speech and press? And, I think, and as I sit here trying to stream with no viewers, like, I mean, obviously, that's what I mean. The problem with the tech is that it's very, like newspapers before it, it's very controlled. It's very editized in terms of, if you're not somebody they want to promote or publish, they, in theory, have no absolute, there's no, you have no right to be published on these platforms. I mean, I guess they offer the publishing, but they don't have to promote you, and they can really just bury your content. And but again, how they determine who gets published and who doesn't, that I don't know. I really don't know. And it's just, again, I mostly use it just to see. But again, I feel like if Twitch and YouTube wanted to put me in a situation where viewers would see me, they could do that. And maybe they have some, unbiased way of giving you your first stream with a higher rating. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. All I know is the bottom line is, I inevitably, as somebody who comes from, the so-called oral tradition of, continental, Western continental, Northern Islanders and Western Islanders, I find speech to be the most effective. I mean, it's like it's the most easy to utilize, and in a sense, it's really the I don't know, reading things and kind of that way the written word, it can be binding, but it's not always binding. I feel like my father's sort of namesake has given me a boon of being exceptionally loud and having the ability to attract a listener here or there. Again, I understand if my housemate Molly, as we get closer to 10 o'clock here, might have I mean, inevitably it helps that I try to stay educated, so I'm not just barking, nonsense. I mean, I would say a lot of the stuff I talk about is relevant and, somewhat a somewhat educated opinion on the topics. Not always like a super detailed educated. And that's one thing I want to work on is, I'm not going to digress into my own personal stuff, but it'd be nice to have a legal education so that I can, sort of understand certain legal concepts and hopefully read more. Again, I mean, the concept that is kind of, I don't know, I mean, I'm kind of curious. I was just watching a Twitch stream of Democrats saying that Biden's done all these great things, but I didn't really hear them mention anything he's done. I mean, I don't know, what has Biden done? Let's take a look here. I guess they're arguing the stock market. All right, COVID shots. What did he do here? Here's the argument. I would say I think the COVID vaccine thing is that's the only thing I really heard. Unless he's claiming he's personally brought emissions down or something his administration's done. Yeah, I have no problem with Biden, I just feel like, we're basically, I mean, everything he just said that he did, which was pretty much just COVID and this, the stock market rally, was all due to that American Rescue Act. I mean, there's no doubt that, passing a almost $2 trillion bill within the first 100 days of office is pretty remarkable. Well, it's 30 minutes. I gotta get off. Nobody's watching. Twitch, they're not gonna be